A 26-year-old woman burned alive on a public train in one of America's largest cities. And the man accused of doing it, he'd been arrested 72 times. 72 times. 72. That single number tells you everything you need to know about what's wrong with Chicago and with Illinois under progressive rule. This isn't just about one horrific crime. It's about a political culture that has turned leniency into law, where criminals are released faster than police can rearrest them, and where ideology has replaced accountability. Governor Pritzker and his progressive allies have sold the public a dangerous lie that compassion means removing consequences. But compassion without justice isn't mercy, it's negligence. And it's that negligence that cost a young woman. Well, let's listen to what President Trump has to say about this. And then we'll unpack why Chicago's leadership keeps choosing ideology over safety.
All the crime that took place last night, the night before, the woman with the burning, they burned the woman. To be talking about that now, they burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times. 72 times, think of that. And they'll let him out again. The liberal judges will let him out again. But we're ready to go. You know, we've been moving toward Chicago. We have a governor that thinks it's wonderful that only like 7 people were killed this week. But we are moving toward doing it, and we're going to, if crime gets, it's horrible what's happening in Chicago. We could make Chicago a safe city in a period of 4 weeks. In a period of 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, it would be totally safe. And the people of Chicago want us to go there. And if you look at the crime that's taken place in Chicago in the last 2 weeks, just take a look. It's on the front page of every newspaper. It's out of control. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob. He ought to invite us in, say, please make Chicago safe. We're going to lose a great city if we don't do it quickly. Make Chicago, we'll do the same thing as we did in D.C., the same thing as we did everywhere we've gone. It's become almost instantly safe. And I want to do it in Chicago. So Governor Pritzker, if you're listening, let's get your act together. Invite us in. We're going to make your place so safe. You're not going to have these crimes that are making the newspapers and the front page of every newspaper and television story, news story. We'll make Chicago a safe place very quickly. I looked at the various cases, granting mercy, discovering that the terrible trauma that everyone's going through. And I had a little bit of a Pritzker joke. I was going to talk about Pritzker in size, but when I talk about Pritzker, I get angry because he's not letting us do the job. So I'm not going to tell my Pritzker joke. They have a very cute little joke, you know. Some speechwriter wrote some joke about his weight, but I would never want to talk about his weight. I don't talk about people being fat. I refuse to talk about the fact that he's a fat slob. I don't mention it. On a more serious note, as we gather around the dinner table, I'd like to lose a few pounds too, by the way. And I'm not going to lose it on Thanksgiving, I can tell you that, because I'm going to have a turkey, but it's not going to be that one. I hope all Americans will have the chance to enjoy the fellowship of family and friends and renew our faith in God's providence. 1 year ago, we were a dead country 1 year ago. The King of Saudi Arabia said it to me. He said it to me actually 4 months ago when I was in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. He said, you know, 1 year ago, the United States was a dead country, and now you've got the hottest country anywhere in the world.
Well, there it is. Raw, unfiltered truth. And whether you like him or not, President Trump is right. When you have a man arrested 72 times walking free, when a city celebrates 7 murders in a week as progress, that's not governance, that's failure. Let's call this what it is. The collapse of law and order under progressive policies. For years, Chicago's leaders, mayors, judges, prosecutors, and the governor himself have built an entire system on the false moral premise that punishment is cruelty, that enforcing the law is somehow unjust, that criminals are victims of circumstance, and society owes them another chance, and another, and then another. But every second chance given to a violent repeat offender is stolen from an innocent citizen who never got one. And that's what happened here. A woman because the system prioritized ideology over protection. And this is the progressive playbook. Empty compassion. These politicians will talk about restorative justice, equity, and community investment. All good things on paper, but they use those terms as shields for inaction. They claim moral high ground while ordinary people live in fear. They've turned prisons into revolving doors. They've disarmed the police with bureaucracy. They've flooded the courts with activism instead of justice. It's not compassion to let criminals run free. It's cowardice, because progressives are too afraid to offend their voter base, too afraid of bad headlines, and too addicted to virtue signaling to confront the reality their own policies created. Governor Pritzker has had years to fix this. Instead, he doubled down on the very policies that made Illinois unsafe. He ended cash bail under the so-called Safety Act. He tied law enforcement's hands, and he's allowed activist prosecutors to redefine criminal accountability into nothingness. Now, when a horrific murder happens, his response isn't urgency, it's deflection. Blame the system, blame society, blame root causes, but never admit the truth. When you stop enforcing laws, you stop having a civilization. Here is the human cost of these policies. Families are too scared to ride public transport. Businesses shutting down because theft and vandalism are no longer punished. A generation of young men growing up without consequences or guidance. This isn't abstract. It's real life, and it's tearing Chicago apart. When you normalize chaos long enough, people stop believing justice is possible. That's the most dangerous part. The psychological collapse that follows physical lawlessness. President Trump said something important, that the federal government could restore safety to Chicago in weeks if invited in. And he's not wrong. When DC was spiraling, federal task forces stepped in. Within months, violent crime dropped. But here is the catch. To fix Chicago, Governor Pritzker would have to admit failure. He would have to prioritize safety over politics. And progressives would rather let people suffer than concede that their ideology doesn't work. So, a 26-year-old woman should have been a turning point. But in progressive Illinois, it will likely become another statistic, another headline followed by silence. And that's what's truly sickening. Because when government stops protecting the innocent, it becomes complicit in the crimes it refuses to prevent. So Governor Pritzker, your citizens deserve safety, not slogans. Your voters deserve justice, not excuses. And if you can't lead with courage, then step aside for someone who will. Because Chicago doesn't need another progressive promise. It needs peace, law, and accountability before there is no one left to save.
Now know the identity of the woman set on fire during a horrific attack on a commuter train. She's 26-year-old Bethany McGee, a business analyst. Her father is a college professor of biblical studies. Cops say this lunatic poured gasoline over Bethany on a Chicago L train as she sat looking at her phone 7 days ago. Bethany tried to fight off her attacker and fled to the back of the train, but cops say the crazed man followed with a lit bottle and set her ablaze.